Good evening and welcome. Appreciate your attendance tonight. On behalf of the board and staff of AdvantageWest, I'd like to welcome you to the fourth AdvantageWest Economic Summit. My name is Tom Alexander, and I have the privilege of serving as the chairman of the board of the AdvantageWest Board of Directors. Welcome to all of you from across our 23-county region and from across the state to this important event. And again, we sincerely appreciate your attendance tonight. We've got a great crowd here. In fact, I was told I think this may be the best attended event that we've had in our 4 years. Somewhere north of 375 people registered. And again, I want to thank you for that. And we're honored to have each of you with us here tonight. At this time, I would like to extend a special welcome to North Carolina Department of Commerce Deputy Secretary and Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Dale Carroll, and his wife, Cindy. Dale and Cindy, if you would stand, I'd appreciate it. Dale and Cindy, I want you to know that we appreciate you coming from Raleigh tonight, and also, Dale, I want to thank you for your service for all the citizens of the state of North Carolina over the last 4 years. Thank you very much. At this point, it's an honor and a privilege to welcome to the stage our distinguished panelists. In alphabetical order they are, and I'll introduce Mike Adams first, president of Moog Music, Inc., which is based here in Asheville. Mike, if you would come forward, please. Thank you, Mike. Next is Anita Brown Graham, Director of North Carolina Center for Emerging Issues. This is Anita's second time as a panelist at our Economic Summit, and we thank her for returning to Western North Carolina. Anita? Thank you very much. We have Mark Irwin with us tonight. Mark is a former U.S. ambassador under the Clinton administration, and he is currently president of Irwin Capital, Inc., out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Mark, please come forward. And last but not least, we have Dan Gerlach, president of the Golden Leaf Foundation, that has done so much for all of us in North Carolina. Dan,
right here,
please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You know, I invite you to, again, to refer to your program and learn more about each of these individuals' impressive backgrounds and their experience. I think you'll be as impressed as I have been as well, and a few of those I've known for a long time, so thank you very much. Okay, now it's time to get down to business, and I'd like to welcome back to our stage moderator, D.G. Martin, once again. And again, as I said, I think you may recognize D.G. as a longtime host of UNC TV program called North Carolina Book Watch. He's also a well-known newspaper columnist and the president of the William R. Keenan Jr. Fund. D.G., I'll turn it over to you. Take it away. And thank all of you.
Well, guys, when you get a plaque, you know what that means. That's kind of like getting the watch. When they're telling you it was a good time, but not a long time. I mean, it was only 4 times. I'm thrilled to be back. Thank you all for inviting me back and for staying after the wonderful networking cocktail meeting hour. I love watching mountain people get it on. And so it's worth coming all the way up from Chapel Hill just to see the way you guys work together, sometimes fight, but always when it comes to the mountains, working together to make it a better place. And I hope that what we talk about tonight, I'm excited about having these experienced people talk about a topic that is, you say, what, innovation? What is an innovator? I was at a meeting this morning on the Chapel Hill campus, and the innovation was, this is a scientific-driven new idea that is picked up by people who take that idea and make something out of it. I mean, but it was very clear that it had to be research-based, and I said, that's not what we're going to be talking about in the mountains. Innovation is going to mean something else. And then I said, DG, what do you think it means? So I said, that's going to be my first question for our panelists. And I'm going to ask you all to wrestle with that definition, understanding that it's not perfect and that it is different for each of us, and to see if we can come not to a consensus, but surround that notion and to begin to see what positive impact it might have if we have a better notion of what we are doing is, when what we're doing is innovation. So, when I hear about Moog, you think about, it's a synonym for you, is innovation. But talk to us about an innovator or an innovation experience and what it might inspire some thinking from the rest of us.
Okay, thank you, DG. Well, my first thought about it is to agree with what you just said. It's very different. It's a very personal thing about innovation, and I think experience is our best teacher of that. And what I mean by that is that as you look back over time and think about the different things that have been innovated, and depending on where you are age-wise, then what innovation is a very personal definition for you and based upon that experience. For example, there's probably a lot of you out there that can remember the day that the telex started replacing part of mail, and then the fax machine started to replace the telex completely. And now you can imagine that at a certain point in time, email will replace a fax machine. And so if you're a 12-year-old, you may never even know what a fax machine is, and you certainly don't know what a telex machine is. So depending on where you enter this world, and really it's the great thing about innovation is one of the things that I try to do at our place is I try to think like a 12-year-old. He may see a cell phone and say, well, yeah, that's cool, but what's next? I've already seen that. I already know everything about that. So I think it's a very personal thing, and I think that's why it's a good subject for this panel to talk about. The second aspect of it is that it's not necessarily product related at all. Services can certainly be innovative. I think UPS and FedEx have shown us that there's a different paradigm now for how quickly things can get from place to place. And from a marketing perspective, YouTube has been a huge benefit for how we brand ourselves at Moog Music. It's really changed people's perception of our company. And even like things like policing, when you read about how New York City turned around their police department, a big part of that was a data-driven approach that they used. So innovation can be done, can be seen in everything, and everybody out in this audience has the ability to innovate in their particular areas of expertise. But from a technology standpoint, my first thought about it is, or the way we think about it is there's two types of innovations. There's core technology and applied technology. And core technology might be things like the semiconductor. And when Shockley invented the semiconductor, he probably was not thinking necessarily about the iPhone, which is applied technology. But I think we can all agree that both the semiconductor and the iPhone are great examples of technology-driven ideas. So that's my general feeling.
Well, let me, before I go to the others, I'm interested, is after what you said, are we who are sort of out and about and not in the center of the development of new products like the iPhone, when you talk about innovation, are we talking about just we're using products that other people develop for us, these new products, or is there an application for us to participate in innovating to improve our lives and our businesses?
I think if you don't participate, then it's probably not innovative. I think that's part of the definition, is that it's considered to be innovative because so many people use it. I think that's the first criteria for it, or one of the first criteria.
Anita, you are located on the campus of one of the most innovative institutions in the country, probably North Carolina State University. But that campus also has an obligation to bring its science and its technology right down to the farm, right down to each one of us. So I'm really excited about hearing your favorite example, your definition of innovation and your favorite example.
Well, I promise you it's not about taking it right down to the farm, so you can hold that in
All right.
advance. For
I might need that later.
That's right. We'll leave that one to Dan. But I love this notion of thinking about innovation as what's next. And of course, as you've already said, on a university campus, sometimes what's next is furthering knowledge for the sake of furthering knowledge, which to me isn't innovation. Innovation is about the application of that knowledge to some existing need. So my favorite example of innovation came recently when the Institute for Emerging Issues partnered with Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina to identify healthcare innovations across the country. And one of the finalists happened to be a teacher from an elementary school in Chapel Hill, who noted that in her classroom, she was having a very hard time after lunch getting students to fully participate. The attention span just wasn't there. But if she let them go out on the playground, they would come in and they would be able to concentrate. And so she had two choices, I would have thought. One was to just sort of let that hour go by and have less productivity. The other would be to just let him go outside and play and recognize she wouldn't be able to meet the pacing guide, but instead she did something else. She decided she would tape the lectures and then take her students for a 35-minute walk after lunch every day. Well, she now has been able to sell this software and hardware that she developed to a national...
So the kids walk around and
they
are listening
walk while they're listening to the lecture.
teacher's
That's right.
lecture.
So they're getting exercise, but they're not losing the time of learning. She's now sold it, made a lot of money. She got a big prize from Blue Cross Blue Shield. I, of course, was insanely jealous because in my mind I'm thinking, I could have thought of that. Certainly I could have thought of that. But the reality is real innovation is more often than not born out of identified need. And here was a teacher who had a specific need that she was trying to address. And so for me, that's the kind of innovation that I get excited about talking about. It's where people perceive a need for a product, a service, a new process, and then they respond to that need through some kind of innovative idea.
So I'm the teacher who would see or have that problem and complain about it and not do anything about it. So I'm not the innovator. She's the innovator because first she sees the need. Seeing the
Right.
need, seeing an unmet need this is your definition,
That's mine.
of seeing the unmet need, and then brainstorming, working for solutions that aren't available to you,
Right.
or that aren't readily apparent to you. I mean, am I getting close to you?
I think that's right. So there are different kinds of people. There are people like you who might complain. There are people like me who have a creative idea every 32 seconds, but none of them seem to really respond to any particular need. And so nobody's buying my ideas and making me very rich. And then there are people who can figure out how to commercialize or monetize the need in such a way that it's not just about responding to their particularized circumstance, but it's responding to a broader set of circumstances that other people share and to which they are offering some new product or service or process.
I love your example, and I would argue that she's an innovator whether she sells the product or not, or she just solves the problem for her particular class, and another teacher might address the problem in a different way. All innovators. Love that. Now, Mark, you've been all over the world and all over this country watching other people. I hope your favorite innovator has a message for us here in the mountains. But if it doesn't, it's okay. We'll make it relevant.
Yeah.
What's your definition of innovation? And give us.
Well, I
your
actually
favorite
had to
example.
go find the definition, the proper definition. It comes from a Latin word, innovare. It from into new. The two words, into new. Innovation differs from invention in that innovation refers to the use of better and, as a result, novel ideas or methods versus an invention, which is a completely different product. Probably the best example of innovation that I can think of is the country, one of the three countries that I was ambassador to was Mauritius in Africa. And Mauritius sought its independence from Great Britain and received it in 1976. And now, you have to picture this. It was a very poor plantation economy, growing sugar. That was their only product. It was 76% of Indian descent and about 16% of African descent, and then British and Chinese and traders from all over the world and so on. But it was a plantation society and plantation economy. And when they received independence, they were one of the poorest countries in that part of the world. Well, the new father of the country, Sir Sawissagar Ramgalam, there's somebody in the audience who actually knows who he is, Elizabeth, or somewhere Elizabeth. But he was the father of the country, and he said, let's take an inventory of our resources. Well, the inventory was pretty short. They were a volcanic island with about 1.3 million people, extremely diverse people, and they had one product, sugar, and they were poor as dirt. And he said, well, we have no natural resources, so we really only have one resource, and that's our people. So the first thing he said was, we're going to educate every person on this island. That's the key to who we are, is education. So that was the innovation for the island. So they offered free education for every child, every adult on the island. And to this day, they still do that. They said, we don't know where we're going to pay for it, but we're going to do it because that's the only asset we have. Well, today, Mauritius is the most prosperous nation in Africa per capita. It has the highest employment rate in all of Africa. It has the highest literacy rate, and in fact, the literacy rate is higher than the United States. It's a democracy and a free enterprise system, an incredible place. They have a huge IT center there. They have tourism, which they did not have before. They have the textile industry and a myriad of other businesses that they went out and sought. They studied the needs of the world. This little teeny dot on a map studied the needs of the world and said, if it's a great need that we can fill with our educated people, bring it here. And they did it. They make parts for Swiss watches in Mauritius. They make Hermès ties in Mauritius. It's an amazing success story, but the whole nation is based upon innovation.
Can you apply that example to Western North Carolina? What can we learn from that here?
Well, I think maybe one thing that we could do is pay attention to Warsaw, Indiana. I don't think many people are familiar with Warsaw, Indiana.
I am.
But if you have a replacement part, a knee, a hip, any replacement parts in your body, that's where they're made, Warsaw, Indiana. And the reason is that, and it's a town of 14,000 people, but it's called the orthopedic capital of the world. In 1895, a fellow named Dupuy invented the first orthopedic devices. He was from Warsaw, Indiana. It's mostly a place of Polish and German immigrants, and a lot of engineers came from there, and he invented these products. A fellow named Zimmer, who was one of his apprentices, created his own independent business from Dupuy, and on and on and on. And so now today, there are thousands of jobs, and that whole economy is based upon this one innovation, the creation of an industry in orthopedic devices. And they're a great economy, by the way.
Well, I think I might want to come back to that. Dan, you are barraged with innovative ideas at the Golden Leaf Foundation, and which one is your favorite? And if we cover,
we funded 187 grants here in the AdvantageWest region. I don't know if I want to get into. These are mountain people, as you point out.
Sure. Well, from a you talk. I'll follow up. Go ahead.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So on innovation, my definition of it is doing something new in a way that makes life a little bit better, in such a way that makes people go, of course, we should have thought of that, or wow, I mean that's pretty neat. And I'm reminded of that commercial that Samsung is just killing Apple with, where it says they're going to put the headphone jack on the bottom. And I think people confuse innovation with technology, and we have to get away from that definition.
Yes.
I think a couple of my favorite definitions here in the West are if you go to the Nantahala River in Swain County, where they have world championships right now. We helped fund a grant to put a wave machine in the middle of the river. Now, I don't know that people wanted us messing with the river, but this helped modulate it so that the racing of world-class participants could occur there. So the world has to come to Bryson and places like that. I think that's pretty cool. I think that's an innovation that we don't run across every day, but takes advantage of a local opportunity and a local asset to make it a little bit more special. And we could go on about the biodiversity of Western North Carolina, where there are plants that are not grown anywhere else in the world but in the Appalachians. And to think about the natural product capability as the world comes to wrestle with this in both as medicinal and for other reasons, cosmetic and what it be, there's money to be made there. And if you could show farmers ways to make money by growing things, they will in fact do this because I think farmers are some of our most innovative people. I'm reminded my board chair, Billy Clark, from Fairview is here tonight, and his family's been here for a long time. And to think of all the reinvention they did and pioneers of his family in the local foods movement is quite astonishing. And I hope tonight that you all thank Billy Clark for his service to my board because he's been a gracious public servant in that way. So those are a couple definitions I'd have of innovation for you, DG.
Well, do you all have any comments or questions for each other based on this conversation on innovation?
Well, I would have one comment. Going back to what Anita said, there has to be a market for it. You have to have the skills to develop it, and you have to have the capital to realize it. And those are the requirements for innovation to come to market, and you're, Dan, helping with that with your foundation. And I think education plays a big part of that. I know the Chamber's done a lot of things these days with involving more venture capital to come to this area. And that's one of the things that we put on a festival just recently called MoogFest. And one of my visions for it is to increase the venture capital component of that and bring more of a daytime component so that we can create more awareness of the innovation that's in the Western North Carolina area and maybe bring some capital to that as a result. So I think those three things all have to work together. Education system is obviously a big part of that. But we also have to have the financial resources to realize our ideas.
I actually have a follow-up question, and it's a question for Dan, and it goes back to this notion of capital. Dan, in your grant making, do you distinguish between what you see as a good idea and what you see as an innovation, and is your capital more available for one versus the other?
I think our grants making goes back to the consent decree upon which we're founded, the statute under which we're governed, and our charter, which is to help transform economically distressed tobacco-dependent rural areas in North Carolina, economically, right? Our money comes from the half of the state share of the master settlement agreement between cigarette manufacturers and the state. And I think it's both. I think one is we have a smaller cycle towards some of these more innovative ideas in our our grant cycle where some of these concepts I talked about were funded. But to take it to scale is something where that capital is not always available. And so we try to help do with that through our grants making through 501c3 nonprofits and governmental entities, which help foster this private sector job creation and expansion and retention here in North Carolina. For instance, up in Graham County, which battles with Scotland County for the highest unemployment rate in the state, through cooperative ventures with Stanley Furniture up there. That's the only place they make furniture in America right now, is in Robbinsville. And to help finance some equipment at a time when it was needed, to help work with people, to help them think through how to do processes better. That's how we're going to onshore some of this manufacturing that's going to keep us competitive. That the Institute of Emerging Issues that you lead is really going to have their February conference all about, I think including some of your previous work on Generation Z. Is that where we're
That's right.
So that's how it's both is what the Golden Leaf Foundation is interested in.
Okay.
Well, I want to follow. You guys have got me going now. Anita, what is the difference between a good idea and an innovation? I thought what's the difference? Or isn't innovation come out of a good idea?
So I think a good idea is a broader category than an innovation. It goes back to this notion of, is there a market for that idea? Lots of people have lots of good ideas, but is there an application? Is there somebody out there who is in need of whatever it is your idea is promoting? And the answer may be yes or no.
So your question to Dan was, do you fund good ideas, or do you insist that the good ideas be innovations that have a market?
That's
was
right. That's right.
That?
But then he wanted to use it to give his background on the Golden Leaf Foundation, and I felt like as a good friend I should let him get away with that.
So you were just a plant on this panel. Dan mentioned your conference.
I try to throw it back to her. I mean, God.
No, she did. I'm gonna toss it. If y'all forgive me, I'm gonna toss this, and I think this is going to be helpful. But you became this spring or this winter the expert on this new generation, the Gen Z. And so one of the things that I think we want to talk about is what do we do to prepare our younger people to be maybe the innovators that we're not? How can they do a better job? So talk about the Gen Z and whether or not what we're doing now is with education, with our social situation, are they going to drive us? And if not, what else could we do?
So the good news is this.
And I should say, I'm so sorry, but not everybody here knows what a Gen Z is.
I will explain it for you.
Thank you
Practiced. For giving me that low ball so that I can now go into all this background. For the last year and a half, the Institute for Emerging Issues has been focusing on those young people who were born between 1990 and 2002. This is essentially the lower half of the millennium generation, and these are the young people who began graduating from college and from high school in large numbers as part of the Great Recession. So in many ways, they have been defined by the economic context of which they have come of age. Here's what is good news about Gen Z. They almost seem to be pre-programmed to be innovators. These are the young people who have grown up with technologies in a way that truly defines how they learn, how they play, how they live. And so not only are they innovators, they are born natural innovators with technology. They will try just about anything. They also are much more risk takers than the generations before them. And in some ways, being an innovator means that you are willing to try something new, something that hasn't been done before, that you're willing to try to see opportunities where nobody else sees an asset base or an opportunity base. All of that being great. But as you've already heard on this panel, there are other things that will make an innovator successful. You have to have access to capital, and in this economy, lots of young people with great ideas, perhaps innovations, struggle to find the initial capital to get started. You have to be able to connect effectively to markets, and while technology enables a lot of that. Technology in and of itself is not enough. You need to be able to be networked with suppliers and others in your cluster. And then, perhaps most importantly, you need to have good business acumen if you're going to be a successful innovator. So for a lot of young people in Gen Z, and we've seen this with a whole new generation of young entrepreneurs, they're willing to go out there and try something new, but they probably have not had the skill set necessary or the support infrastructure necessary to help them be successful in taking that good idea to scale, as Dad has been talking about, with the sort of mentorship necessary for lots of young people who want to be entrepreneurs.
Well, Mike, you live here. And how well equipped are we here in this region to provide this long list of resources and needs to turn the Gen Z innovators into successful innovators? What do you need to do? What do we need to do?
Well, the first thing I'd have to say about it is we've had an opportunity to hire some of these people, because some of them are in the workforce now, and about a third of our workforce is coming from the University of North Carolina at Asheville, which is great. And the thing that I've been amazed with most about these kids is their communication skills and their maturity and their polish when it comes to interacting with each other and with our vendors and our customers. They're really fantastic at that. So I don't know how that fits in with what you're talking about, but it's kind of weird because you sort of think about them as, kids, and at a certain point I have to stop and ask myself, well, he's only 22 years old. It's hard to picture the maturity level of these kids, and I think that's a tip of the hat to University of North Carolina, their liberal arts program. They're doing a really good job there. From a deficiency standpoint, we need more people in our region, in our area, that are capable of working in the multimedia world, doing website design, doing graphic design, doing motion design, all that kind of stuff that you need for marketing these days. We're always looking for people in that area, and it's been a shortcoming from my experience of what is available here locally.
Mark, I'd love for you to, I don't, you say what you want to, but I'm interested in getting back to Warsaw and how what these guys have talked about might help get us there in terms of the use of the educated, these educated Gen Zers and others.
Well, the lesson of Warsaw is the same lesson of Silicon Valley. It started with Shockley, and it spun out all from that one invention. The innovations that took place from the invention of the semiconductor, the innovations or improvements or changes, innovation and change are synonyms, led to what we today call Silicon Valley. One of the lessons of both of those places is that innovation is infectious. It's a viral sort of a thing, and the closer you are to it, the more you're going to have. So the idea is that in Warsaw, one guy invented something, a lot of other people improved it around him and spun off and provided services and so on and so forth. Well, the third ingredient for innovation is creativity. And one of the great resources, I think, of the Asheville area and the whole region up here in western North Carolina is that it has attracted over generations and generations now very creative people. You look at the base of what all happens in this part of the world, and creativity is a big part of it. A good example here is the beer industry. I mean, these microbreweries and the what do you call the small?
Why do you look at me when?
But the beers you drink.
Yes, sir.
all of these breweries that have popped up in Asheville. I mean, I think Asheville has more breweries. I don't know what that says, but Asheville has more small breweries producing more innovative changes to beer than anywhere else I know. Very small thing, but very important. So, and Asheville is a very tolerant society of people who are different, and that too brings creativity. Being able to be accepting of change, difference, is very creative. And so I think this area has a great future in innovation. And I would suggest that one of the things that AdvantageWest might consider doing is putting on a charrette of some sort to bring people together and say, what are the changes that are coming? And how do we get in front of those changes and start it here so that it creates the infection here and the others come to the infected area. If you remember Wayne Gretzky, the great hockey player, he said good players.
I remember him well, but he never played in Raleigh.
Well, but you remember him well because he's a famous hockey player. But he said good players play where the puck is. Great players play where the puck is going to be. And I made up a little list of some things that I think are going to disappear from society. Change, in other words. Mm-hmm. And if they're disappearing, it's because they're being replaced by something else. And so maybe what this area needs to do is look where the puck is going to be.
Would you share that list with us?
Of course I would. For a beer. The post office is probably going to disappear. Imagine a world without the United States Post Office. They're so deeply in financial trouble today. $16 billion they lost just this year.
So excuse me, I love this example because it's controversial for me because I'm a traditionalist. I'm going to fight to keep the post office in my community. And you're saying if I'm on the Gen Z risk-taking,
They really don't care.
I want to figure out what needs are going to be left.
What's going to replace them?
What's going to replace them?
If this is correct. But what's already replacing them is email, FedEx, UPS. They've just about wiped out all of the good revenue sources for the post office.
How's somebody in a small town in western North Carolina going to, just help me, brainstorm with me. I live in Minneapolis, and they're going to close the post office in Dogtown or whatever they call it, and I'm living there. And is there an entrepreneurial or innovative opportunity for me there, or are you just saying this? I've got to be with FedEx and I've got to be with email. Is it
30-something years ago, I worked for a company called United Parcel Service. Back then, they weren't even nationwide. One of the things we studied while I was there 30-something years ago was the demise of the United States Post Office and when it would happen. The other thing we studied was how does UPS, back then they would come to your business, pick up the packages, deliver them wherever you wanted them delivered. But that was fine for businesses. But if you wanted them to come to your home or if you wanted to go to a little local place and ship one, very difficult to do because the UPS facilities were in the industrial sides of towns. They were not a great place for you to go drop a package off. And we studied for several years how do we penetrate the individual market, the you and me, for one package at a time. And the idea that ultimately came up, and we implemented it, or they implemented it long after I left. Probably because I left, they had to implement it. But, and that was to do what we now call these little postal businesses, where you take your package and you can buy stamps. You can get a post office box. It's not really a federal. I mean, it's
so a substitute.
You can rent a box. You can also buy a few office supplies and so on and so forth. That was an innovation. That was a gigantic innovation. UPS had the idea literally 30 years ago, and they implemented it 15 years ago.
Well ahead of your list. Well, now I interrupted you, and I only let you
Okay.
read one item on your list, so I'm going to let you go now.
All right, here we go. The second thing, the physical check. Write a check, pay a bill with a check. Britain is now laying groundwork to do away with the check by 2018. That is their goal, to do away with it. It costs the financial system billions of dollars a year to process checks. It's a waste of money. Plastic cards and online transactions will lead to the eventual demise of checks. The little bank that I'm on the board of, if you receive a check, you can take your iPhone, take a picture of that, send it to our bank, and get immediate transfer of that fund, that amount of funds, into your account. And you can do it in our little bank, which is not Bank of America. You can also do it in Bank of America, but the check is going to become obsolete. It probably already is. We just don't know yet. The next thing, the newspaper. I just received a notice down in Charlotte from the Charlotte Observer that...
You have to stop. You can't do this to me.
Sorry, DG. Do you want one of his beers? Might need several.
Should I let him keep on with this? I mean, do you all want to hear
Well,
more? I mean, I'm tired of this. You started meddling with...
I'm meddling now, that's right.
Real quick.
The newspaper, the younger generation, Generation Z, they don't even read the newspaper. They don't subscribe to the newspaper. Newspaper subscriptions are down. They need a prescription. And now the Charlotte Observer just this week sent something out saying that they want you to switch over to the internet copy of the paper. And they're heading in that direction. Which newspaper was it in New Orleans? They went to all internet newspaper? The New Orleans, whatever it is?
Times-Picayune.
Times-Picayune. So it's going with the rise of the internet devices and the readers and so on and so forth. And
All right, one more.
just one?
Yeah.
Oh, you
That's all
won't.
we can take.
You won't like this one. You're not going to like this one. I don't like this
Well,
one.
let's don't do it then. Somebody said before they said, we want good news.
Don't tell Gigi.
No, don't.
So I'm going to stop him. I mean, I'm sorry I let him loose, but
Go for it. You got to do it.
no,
The book.
Don't.
okay.
The physical book. Now I've done it. And we just published one a week ago, but the physical book.
All right, we're not going to talk about that.
Okay.
Here's what I want you all to this is great. Thank you. Enough though. But let's talk about the positive side of this, and let's brainstorm together. And I want to start with you, because you've been intimately involved with looking at ideas that are bubbling up rather than down. Right. And hearing Mark talk, are any of the people in Western North Carolina addressing these opportunities that are coming from things that are disappearing? And if not, give us some examples of some of them.
I'm a little nervous about this, because part of my fear is if you reach 80% of the public with no post office or no this or that, you leave a lot of the areas I care about. I'm behind. And then if you don't say you have to serve them, they may not get served because it may not be a densely populated enough population for people to care about it. But a lot of us do care about it. And I would sense that one of the things that in rural North Carolina and AdvantageWest has been a leader in this in the region is trying to figure out how do we get broadband access to as many people as we can. It is a necessary part of infrastructure in today's age. And it takes that remoteness away as an issue where people could communicate with people all over the world. In some of the more urban areas, it's taken as a given, right? But in a lot of areas in the state where we do, the Golden Leaf Foundation does its work, it's not quite there yet. So we're doing a part of it, and it's going to take a lot of work to help get it there. I think the second thing, too...
Can I interrupt you?
Apparently you can.
You want another beer?
Do you all need a moderator? Or do you want to just let these guys go? But this broadband, we've talked about broadband before. And the general idea is if we can get broadband to these remote areas. The remote areas are really, in many places, many cases, more pleasant to live. It attracts entrepreneurial, talented people, and it works to enliven economically a region that would otherwise not be able to keep up with what's going on in the rest of the world. Is that
Yes.
a myth, or is that true?
I believe it's true. I believe there's truth in it. Yes, sir.
But to innovate, we need to do
You let him steal the ball from you.
the next.
But I mean, think of what he talked about. If he said, and if he's right, if you talk about the post office going away, if you talk about newspapers going away, if you talk about books going away, what was the other thing that's going away that gave him a heart attack?
It was television and books.
I mean, other things that go away.
Oh, I got more.
Then there has to be replacements for those things. And it seems to me that a lot of the reason why is because these advances that have led to the decline in these institutions that he's discussed. So I think to ensure more people access to this helps make sure that we're not a state of a successful corridor between Charlotte and Raleigh, but that we're a successful state and a successful nation. And that's what thank you. And that's what needs to happen next.
That's your mother.
But the other thing,
This panel has gotten out of control, and your moderator is probably not going to be invited back.
the pioneer in healthcare.
But you already got your plaque. Don't worry about it.
To also be successful in rural North Carolina, including a lot of this region, is putting health care within access of people. Because that's one thing that distance can't solve. If you want to retire to the West, right, you're going to look to see where that doctor, that high-quality hospital is, and is it close there? If you're going to open a manufacturing plant, you're going to want to know, is there a hospital where something, God forbid, goes bad wrong, we can get people to? That's an important part of infrastructure that cannot be offshored, right? I mean, at least not in the way. You could go get treated, but if you need some help right then, you want it right then. And you want it within the distance that's transportable. So I think those are two things we need to focus on as a state and how to help innovate and deal with an innovative world.
Mike,
Yeah, I was just going to say that we got a really good example of these things that as they go away, and Dan just hit on it a second ago, is there something that is going to replace it? And it doesn't necessarily have to be the something that is replacing it. And we've got a really good example. Matt and Agnes are here, and I know you talked to them this afternoon. And they had an opportunity that was born out of necessity to leave a large radio conglomerate and start a local independent. And now they're linking local independent radio stations together for their show and for other programming. And I think that they could have just rolled over and said, well, the big conglomerate's going to take over everything, but they didn't do that. They're being entrepreneurial, they're being innovative, and I'm really excited about what I saw them doing at the radio station last week.
So I'm in pain, too, about the notion of the newspaper going away. Because although I read the newspaper online 90% of the time, I subscribe and get it delivered to my front yard so that my neighbors can think I'm enlightened. Okay. So who's going to have the innovation that helps me look like I'm at the helm of insight on what's going on in North Carolina because I'm reading the newspaper inside my house? And I say that sort of tongue-in-cheek, but the reality is every time you have one of these disruptions, you have a lot of opportunities that are created for smaller innovations. And that's really important to keep in mind.
There's an interesting example that's taking place right now in Detroit, Michigan. I was up there not long ago giving a speech, and I grew up there as a child. That was a city that went from 1.8 million people to 600,000. And they're reinventing themselves as we speak. They got infected with the auto industry during the last century. And that infection spread like wildfire, and it built the city. They lost the innovative parts of the industry. Japan came in, we remember, and Germany came in, and so on. And they started out innovating our Detroit people. But now Detroit has learned its lesson, and it's rebuilding itself, trying to innovate in other fields, and they're inventorying their assets. What do they have to offer? And then they're trying to figure out how they match that with the next needs, the coming needs, versus trying to rebuild an industry that they lost 2/3 of or 3/4 of. So that's what I'm suggesting here, is that in this part of our wonderful state, let's inventory what we have to offer, like Mauritius did. The only thing they had was people, so they said, we better improve our people. But inventory, I mean, this part of the state is really one of the most gorgeous places in the United States. And the people here are just fabulous. So put all that together, and then how do you take that and find the innovations that haven't been innovated yet and bring them here?
Well, I want to talk about that a little bit, and I want to start with the idea, Anita, that you introduced in terms of the Gen Z's, this generation's willingness to take risk, and you didn't say this, but to deal with the failure that goes often with risk. In the mountains, there is a culture of we don't like to fail. We don't like to fail, and is that a detriment to the development of a risk-taking culture?
So I have to say, DG, and it's not because I've been fed incredibly well this evening, I don't see that. My job at the Institute for Emerging Issues is to find innovative things happening across the state of North Carolina and to lift them up as promising practices. And when I think about the work that we did in creativity, the work that we did in healthcare innovations, the work last year on Gen Z, and then the upcoming work on changes in manufacturing, disproportionately, the innovations I'm lifting up come from this corner of the state.
Wow. Well, how about with Golden Leaf? I mean, I don't want to just make this to be a center of praise of Western North Carolina.
No,
for being the great
and
innovators,
I think her statement is well justified. I think, though, to help Generation Z succeed, is my generation before mine has to understand is what can we do to help them succeed, right? I mean, because there is a lot of tremendous self-confidence there, bless their hearts. But I mean, there are things that they don't yet know that they don't know. And so for us to be good mentors, one of the things we have to understand is to teach them, to instruct them, is when we're trying to use technology that they're more facile with than we are, is there has to be a lot of professional development going on in my generation preceding on that technology to help transform teaching and learning, which Mark started off the evening talking about, at all levels of education from pre-K through the university. And I think, too, that we have to, when it comes time to fostering innovation, it's not only the financial capital that's an issue, but about how do we help these people take these great ideas and put a business plan together that's sustainable in the long term, right? That's where innovation becomes real, is that moment when it's a transition between a startup operation to an ongoing operation. And Henry Dawson and I talked about this earlier on the radio. And that's what we can do to help these Generation Z people succeed. And I think it's important to determine whether or not innovation is going to continue to be a hallmark of the region or not.
There's a whole debate going on in our state right now about the role of education, from higher education all the way down to kindergarten, and what we teach and who we teach and how much education a young citizen of North Carolina is entitled to, and are we to train people for a general productive life or for a specific job that might be available now. But all of these suggest to me that North Carolina, the United States, has ignored the lesson that Mark brought to us from Mauritius about the basic resource that we have. It's our people. And if we don't provide them with the education, training, or whatever preparation is required to take advantage of these opportunities that are developing, we've left them behind. So, I mean, preaching is over. The question is, what do we need? What do you all see we should encourage the people involved in education to do to prepare us, to prepare the new generation to be innovative, to respond to the opportunities for innovation?
You know,
Mark.
Well, the first thing to understand is that huge innovation is taking place in education. There is now free university on the internet. Who is it? Harvard and MIT are now offering classes, and there are 2 or 3 companies now, I've forgotten the names of them, classes that you can get credit for on the internet free. Hundreds of classes, not just a few. So, and I'm on the board of UNC Charlotte, and we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on campus physical plant, physical structure. And yet you can take a course from Harvard and get a certificate for no money. And our tuition's going up every year. So even the innovation that's taking place in the field of education, we're going to have to be prepared for. And I don't think we are. So, you know, that's something that this area, with the beauty of this area and the attractiveness of the area and so on, this area could use that change, move toward that change like Wayne Gretzky said, get ahead of it instead of chasing it.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think there are 2 things. One is, I think one of North Carolina's great innovations has been the leadership it's shown in early college and getting young people who would not normally go to a higher education experience while they're still in high school getting college credit. So for every year these young people are getting, and in my neighborhood out in the east in Edgecombe, early college, I met 3 young people who we gave scholarships to who have 2 years of college education at age 18. So they're going to go on. They've already saved their parents, $15,000 a year in tuition and fees at a state university, and they've saved us as taxpayers, $12,000, $13,000 a year in state subsidy. So it's a remarkable accomplishment in which North Carolina is leader, and it helps get them the skills they need to succeed. The second thing is we have to realize that there are employers who cannot find the labor they need to fill positions right now. And this is about criminal. And so we're trying to do our part and work with employers and fund community colleges who are great leaders in this in terms of what do we need to help employers in this region get the skilled workers they need to be welders, industrial machinists, or allied health workers, or what have you. In the West, we have a lot of great ideas coming in from this region on that. And so there are a couple areas where I think we're going to really hit the mark on the economy and move it forward.
Are you saying that we have a shortage of, that there are jobs for well-trained people that aren't being filled?
In this region, in this state, and in this nation, sir. Yes, sir, I am.
So there's an entrepreneurial, innovative opportunity all over the place to just get one by one people who are capable of accepting this training into the workforce by figuring out even better ways to provide that education for them.
I think the community college has a natural affinity for working with businesses within its region. And those are among the 58 that are most successful at doing that will have our support and the support, I think, of many others to help them do it better.
Nita?
So I think that there will continue to be an increased role for specialized training, and I agree with Dan that the community colleges are amazing at doing that. Mm-hmm. But I want to take us back to that initial observation of Gen Z in the workplace, where you said the things that impress you are the communication skills, the ability to work with your customers, your vendors. It's going to be very important, I think, as we try to fill these existing jobs with important middle skills, not to forget the broader learning that happens in higher education that really distinguishes a good employee from a not so good employee. And for as excited as I am about the disruption of technology in higher ed and what it means for lowering the cost and making higher education more available to more people, I think we have a lot to learn about which skills are easily taught through technology and which skills really require some other kind of pedagogy. And it's just too new to be able to answer any of those questions at this moment.
A real quick point on this from my perspective. I really look at the K through 12, the way things are being taught right now, and I obviously haven't been in school in a long time, but what I see is too much teaching by rote, by memorization. You got to learn your ABCs. You got to know that 1 + 1 = 2, 2 + 2 = 4, and 5 + 5 = X. And what I find is that they don't teach X + X = 10. And the creativity that comes through thinking about it that way as opposed to 5 + 5 = 10 and just memorization. And I wish we'd see more from the K through 12 area that involves let's think about things as opposed to memorizing things.
I want to shift gears just a little bit before we finish up. And one of the things that I think all of you have mentioned in terms of the cashing in on innovation and innovative ideas is that is one of the links that is often missing, and that is are the resources, and that is the capital that an innovator needs. And so I'd kind of like to, if with your permission, and you can pass on this if you want to, are there any developments that would encourage us, in your experience, about the availability of resources, or are we stuck forever in a time where we're going to be restricted in terms of the availability of capital for real good business opportunities? And I wonder, Dan, if you'd start us off with this just in terms of working with the people who've gotten grants or applying for grants and the need for additional capital on their part in order to go forward with their business ideas.
Well, as a charitable foundation, our grants go to 501c3 nonprofits and governmental entities. And I think if they have good ideas to help foster and assist in private sector job creation, we're able to do that. I think on the private sector side, there's a lot of the uncertainty among what's happening in Washington is keeping cash on the sidelines right now. I see in the economic development side a kind of a pause right now while people wait to see how that climate clears up. I think corporations and other entities, including investors, have capital, have cash they're waiting for it to invest. But they need some certainty, right? We need some certainty as where the nation and state are going in order for them to feel comfortable about investing. And once they do, I think if you have an idea and if it has a good business plan, then there, I think, will be funding opportunities available to you. But let me repeat this. There are a lot of patriots come to us and they have all these brilliant plans to create the next whiz-bang thing. But then we ask about their business plan, and they have 2 people, and they want $20 million, and we're like, that wouldn't be a good stewardship of resources. You have to have a plan for growth that will eventually get you where you need to be. But have some patience about it, and that's my advice tonight.
Mark, you watch these things. You agree?
I think there's plenty of capital available for really great ideas presented in the proper way with the proper expertise behind them to execute.
Yes, sir, I think it's
I can't tell you how many people I've met that want me to invest in their great idea, and when you get to the point of saying, well, how are we going to do this? How are you going to get from here to there with your new innovation? They don't have a clue. And so lots of great ideas die on the vine, not for lack of capital, but for lack of a great story. That you have the whole thing put together. Because innovators, in many cases, are great at ideas and not great at execution. So, but I've never found that there's a lack of capital, even in these very uncertain times, for a great idea whose time has come.
Anita?
I would agree with the thoughts offered earlier about the need, obviously, to have a solid business plan and the ability to articulate it in a way that makes sense to the person from whom you are asking for an investment. But I also think one of the things happening in North Carolina is just that there is a lack of information about existing opportunities. We recently brought together a group of small and medium-sized manufacturing enterprises and asked them what their biggest challenge was. And almost without exception, each one of them said access to capital. So we brought them back in for another meeting where we talked about various state programs available. Banks came in, private equity came in, and I was just stunned at how much we inside Raleigh think the information about great programs is getting out across North Carolina, and it just is not. So probably the most valuable thing we could have done for those manufacturers is make those connections for them with the resources that exist to support them. But it makes you wonder how many other non-matches are happening because people just don't know what's out there.
I love that. So matchmaking is an innovative opportunity, like the walking around listening to the tapes was for your
I think
teacher.
that's right. And I do think it's important to be sensitive to the fact that if you're a small manufacturer or small business enterprise just getting off the ground, it is really difficult to know all the things that might be out there in the universe. And so ways that we can make those resources more apparent and transparent will only help to make more of these connections happen.
Well, Mike, what about capital?
Just real quick, what Anita's talking about and doing is important. We haven't been in this position in 10 years, but I can clearly remember 10 years ago needing money bad, and it was our local banker at Home Trust who, was able to work for us and make it happen. And I asked him just recently. I said, if I came to you today with the exact same story I had then, could you have funded it? And he said, absolutely not. The regulations are too, the fence is too high now.
Well, we're about to come to an end, and I'm going to ask each of our panelists, beginning with Mike, in a minute, just to answer the question that I should have asked them or to make a closing comment. But on their behalf, you all have been great. And it's just been so much fun, I think, for all of us to brainstorm with you and before an audience as appreciative as you all have been. So I hope that's okay for me to thank them on your behalf. But I want to squeeze one more little ounce of wisdom out of each of them. Mike, just a short closing comment on what's on your mind as you leave.
Yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about what Mark said about the Warsaw thing and try to, I know there's some economic development here, there's some public policy people that are here, and I'd like to just be real specific. In my opinion, finished good manufacturers, people that build stuff that go to consumers, especially small bit to medium-sized businesses, are what this area can attract and what it needs. If we attract more finished goods manufacturers, they will leverage an additional 8 jobs from component suppliers, from raw material suppliers, and from service suppliers. And if I was a public policy person, an economic development person, I would specifically be trying to attract finished good manufacturers, especially those that export, because then they're not specifically tied to the local region or even the U.S., but they have a balanced approach from a sales side, and that really helps.
Thank you. Anita?
I think it could be possible to walk away from this conversation thinking innovation is a choice, or dividing the world into those who do and those who don't. But the reality is, when you think about the kinds of changes, some of which depressingly we have considered here today, all of us are going to have to be responsive in some ways to those changes, and all of us are going to be called on to be more and more innovative as time goes on. And so I'm just very excited that AdvantageWest would have picked this topic for this session this evening, and very excited that so many people would have come to begin to start thinking about what is my role in this new world of innovation.
Thank you. Mark.
I'm sorry to have put the wet blanket on things, telling you what the changes are that are coming.
You inspired us to respond.
But who would like to hear the other few things I have?
Go
Sorry,
get 'em.
DG.
No, you got the go ahead.
The residential telephone landline. It's on its way.
Done.
It's nearly gone. But let me tell you something. I was serving in Africa in the late 90s and right at the turn of the 2000s. Mauritius had already gotten rid of the landlines.
Yeah.
They had gone completely wireless for residential service. They're ahead of us. So that's gone. How about this one? You're going to love this one, Mike. I've got a wet blanket for everybody except the beer industry. Music delivery as we know it. The music industry is a declining, failing industry for a number of reasons. The illegal downloading that we all know about, the new innovative music does not have a current outlet, the greed and corruption in the industry of the record labels and the radio conglomerates are destroying the whole industry. 40% of music today is purchased as catalog items. In other words, used music, not new music. Very high percentage. So the whole music industry is going to be rapidly changing. Television, as we know, is in decline. The number of TV stations that we have today, the plethora of TV stations, will start declining now. It seemed to go on forever. They seem to be climbing up into the stratosphere, but now they don't make money. Lots of them don't make money. The delivery systems are not working well. And today, most of the television viewing is taking place on computers, believe it or not. That whole industry is changing. Netflix and computer delivery of movies and entertainment and concerts, and next it'll be football and so on. I hate to talk about football.
Hold on, you've gone meddling now.
Now I got you.
Can we stop them?
I went
Can
to
we
Notre
stop
Dame.
them?
We're
Y'all wanna hear
11-0.
more?
Be still. We're almost there.
You can.
Go ahead. They want to hear more.
All right. The things you own are going to decline. The amount of stuff you actually physically own is going to decline.
That's good news.
Our possessions, we may not own many of our possessions, physical possessions in the future. Your pictures used to be in albums, and then CDs, and then on hard drives. Now thumb drives. The next thing is the cloud. You won't have a physical picture. You won't have a physical print. You'll have a screen, even you can do this on your desk, that gets pictures from the internet, and you can show your family, you can show your dog, you can show anything you want, a Picasso on the wall. So you won't
One more.
The music used to be on records, then it's on tapes, then CDs, and now it's on the cloud. It's moving to the cloud. The same for movies and documents. Your computer's tied straight to the internet, so you won't really even have hard drives, perhaps, in the very short future. Books, music, all of that sort of stuff, you'll just grab as you need it and then let it go. It just becomes poof. So,
All right. Thank you.
The last one.
No, you've done the last one.
The last one.
All right, one more.
Your privacy. It's gone. Forget about privacy. The concept that we used to take as privacy is gone. There are TV cameras everywhere. They're in streets and most of the buildings. They're built into your computer, your cell phone. Whoever they are, know everything you buy, everything you do. The GPS knows where you are because of your cell phone.
You know, Mark, if only
Google Streets.
General Petraeus had heard your talk, everything would have been fine.
General Petraeus would still be General Petraeus. But one last comment. Thomas Edison said, and just remember, because this is the hope of the future. He said this in 1903. We don't know 1/1,000,000% of anything. That's our hope for the future.
There you go. All right, great.
Thank you.
Now would you like to give a concluding comment?
I think probably the most important part of the evening, despite all this wisdom I've gained from listening to my fellow panelists, was probably held out in that reception. When people working together think about things, that's where the work gets done. In addition, I hope you had a couple libations of your choice because I'm a much better speaker that way. But I would say this, is that I think it will be a failure of this region to not be realistically optimistic. I may have messed up some stuff. Be optimistic about your region. It's a beautiful place. It's been a place of success, and it will be a place of success for the next century for our children if we work together to make it be. I believe strongly that North Carolina is poised for to continue to be a great place. I mean, people come here from all over the world. I mean, we're a state that's growing. We're a region that's on the ascension. And I think everybody should leave here, given what they've heard tonight and what they heard out there, looking forward to how we can work together to make this place better.
Well, I want you to know that as someone who's involved in writing newspaper columns, talking about books on television, I'm charged up to go innovate and to go find some other things to do where I can help. And again, on behalf of our panel, thank you. And I want to thank them on your behalf for an incredibly productive session, a lot of wisdom and a lot of great ideas. This was a great treat for me to be with you. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Great job, guys.
Appreciate it.